All right. As I said, we have him in person. All right. So we are convened after a few ripples. We're convened for our public work study session of July 7th, 2021, with an update from the municipal utilities in Kansas and Kansas Municipal Utilities. And I have no particular agenda other than yours, so I'm going to turn it over to you all, but perhaps we could start with introductions from all of our presenters today, and then you could move into your program.
Well, thank you, Chair French, Commissioner Keene, Commissioner Duffy. It is a pleasure to be here this morning. My name is Colin Hansen. I'm the Executive Director of Kansas Municipal Utilities, or affectionately known as KMU. And maybe I can even introduce these guys for you, if that's okay. To my left is Paul Moberg. Paul is the General Manager of the Kansas Municipal Energy Agency, which also entails the Kansas Municipal Gas Agency. And to his left is Mark Chesney. Mark is the CEO and General Manager of the Kansas Power Pool out of Wichita. Paul's group is out of Overland Park. And then keeping us all straight in row number 2 there is Kimberly Swati. Kimberly is our legislative liaison for the municipal utility community. So that's our distinguished panel today. And they promised me that I get to do the easy stuff up front, and they would handle all the difficult questions.
Oh, nice.
that might come their way. So. Well, if it is okay with the commission, I would like to walk through just some quick slides with an overview of our organizations, a little bit about some of the projects that we have ongoing. And then we'll turn it over to Paul and Mark to do the same. And then we thought we might end with a little bit of conversation about Winter Storm Uri, which unfortunately seems to be the gift that keeps on giving within our community. So a little bit about KMU. We are the statewide trade association for municipal utilities. We do more than just electric and natural gas. We also represent water, wastewater, and even a handful of telecommunications utilities. Currently, we've got 185 cities across Kansas that operate one or more of those types of utilities. Our organization is actually headquartered in McPherson, and we've got currently 11 full-time employees and a number of part-time folks that are out doing training in the cities. The next slide shows a current map of our membership, and you can see that we are spread out, quite a bit from east to west, large to small, metropolitan areas and everywhere in between. All 185 of our members have a water utility and a wastewater utility. We've got 102 electric members, 39 gas members, and 11 that are a combination electric and gas. Our organization goes back a long ways. We were actually formed in 1928. And so we've got a very lengthy history of providing utility service and us supporting our municipal utility members. I would say on the electric side, probably the majority of our folks have been in operation for over 100 years. And in most cases, these are in towns where if they wanted to have electric service back when they started, they had to form their own municipal utility. That just wasn't lucrative enough for a private entity to come in and do it. And so that was the genesis of many of our systems, and they are doing very well under the public power business model going forward. We do a lot of work on the legislative and regulatory side. You might recognize the young man in the middle there. That actually is the gentleman on the far right is the executive director of KMU before me. He put together his 35 years as executive director in my 21, and apparently it's a job that does not turn over very, very quickly. But in addition to the legislative and regulatory work, one thing that we do, or several things that we do that are just as important, if not more important than the advocacy side of things, is the workforce development side of things. And if it's okay with the commission, would like to talk a little bit about some of our efforts there as well. This is actually a photograph of our KMU Training Center. It's been open for just over 4 years now, but it was the largest investment our membership has ever made in assets or in a facility. State-of-the-art training center. It sits on a 35-acre training field that has a substation, all kinds of overhead distribution, underground distribution, water distribution, a natural gas system that can be pressurized with air. The whole concept is for us to be able to bring these municipal utility workers to this facility, sit them down in a classroom session and teach them how to be that line worker or power plant operator or water operator, and then walk them out into the field and encounter every type of situation that they might actually find working their job in their city. So this is in McPherson. Yes. Yeah. So it's got a 300-person auditorium and about a 10,000 square foot garage with power poles in the garage so we can have people working even when the Kansas weather is a little bit fickle outside. So absolutely, please.
So do you have a relationship with the university in McPherson?
Yeah, yes and no. They have come in and rented our facility.
But beyond that, in terms of students
No.
or trying to train them, but also send them to school and get a degree there at McPherson College?
Not currently with McPherson College. We do have an arrangement with Sumner County,
Okay,
our Cali Community College.
Cali County.
Yeah, on a power plant certification program that we worked with them on, but that's really about it.
Okay. Attracting talent, is that a problem?
It's a huge problem for us.
Okay.
Yeah. Attracting and retaining talent is a big issue for us.
Are you in the high schools?
We're trying. We had a career day last year, brought in all of the McPherson County area kids in, had them bust in, and actually did it while we were doing our overhead school. So we knocked over several poles to try to replicate an emergency, and then had them come in and kind of watch how we recover from that. We've got another event coming up later this month where we're bringing all of the police departments in the county to again instruct them what to do if you have a car crash, lines on a car, and give them some useful information that way.
Real good. Thank you.
Yep. So if you'll humor me, I just have a few pictures, I guess, of our facility. Would note that if there's ever a need by the commission to have a remote meeting out in McPherson, we would love to host you. It's really been a great facility for us.
Are you headquartered there as well?
We are. Yeah. So this is just a picture of our garage during our ribbon cutting, and you can see that we've got several power poles based in the garage where they can teach climbing, and this is part of our groundbreaking ceremony, which was kind of fun to do. So if you look at where we were in 2019, we actually had 165 separate events at the training center, over 5,500 visitors. Our staff drove over 200,000 miles providing on-site training in each of the cities. We drafted 111 electronic newsletters. It seemed like a great idea at the time to do 3 weekly newsletters. It seems like less of a great idea now. We sent mutual aid to 4 communities in Kansas and several crews down to Florida for hurricane response. And we even got our line worker apprenticeship program registered in Nebraska and Colorado, and have some folks there that were assisting in that. Yeah.
Another question as it relates to wildfire issues in Kansas and the fact that the Forestry Service is kind of standing up some training. Are you involved in that as well?
Not currently, but that would be a good thing to reach out to them on. Vegetation management obviously is a very big thing within the electric industry, and certainly nationwide, especially when you look at what's happening in the Western United States right now. Truthfully, we've been less involved with vegetation management. Most of our folks are in very rural, open areas.
Right.
Not that there's not.
But
wildfires,
I think based on the fire that came up from Oklahoma a few years
Yeah.
ago, and really looking as to where some of your members are, I do know some utility groups have gone to California to do some training there with those folks to really understand what goes on before and after a wildfire. So
That's a great idea.
yeah, thank you.
Is this training facility utilized to any extent to help train co-op employees?
It's funny that you should ask that. We actually will be hosting the cooperative underground school this year for the first time. So, we try to work cooperatively, collaboratively with them, as much as possible. And we're looking forward to expanding that.
How about the linemen? Any training of linemen through your facility for co-op?
Every once in a while, it seems like you sort of have different approaches to line worker training and line worker apprenticeship from the co-op community and the municipal community. Seems like they get a lot of their folks out of Manhattan Area Technical College or Pratt Community College. A lot of times our folks are the locally trained ones. And truth be told, one of our biggest problems is taking that young person, training them to be a line worker, and then they go off to a cooperative or an investor-owned utility where the compensation tends to be a bit higher, quite a bit higher. So,
Really?
yeah. I mean, depending on the city, but yeah, that is one of our weaknesses and something that we're trying to focus some effort on.
Is there a shortage of personnel in this area, as there seems to be in virtually every area today?
Yeah, we've got a number of cities that are really struggling to find line workers.
Thank you.
So anyway, that was 2019. 2020 was, as you might expect, a little bit different for us. I've got the running joke. I've told my board that whose ever idea it was to encumber the association with $3.5 million in debt to build a facility predicated on the idea of bringing large groups of people together during a global pandemic probably ought to be fired. But thankfully, they did not do that. We did pivot pretty quickly. This actually shows all of the masks that we had in our garage. Our staff distributed almost 42,000 masks free of charge to essential utility workers over 2020, working with FEMA. So we did a lot of delivery of that, pivoted a lot of our training online. I would say now that we're well into 2021, we're pretty much back to normal operations and seeing our facility used quite a bit again. To the question earlier about some of the challenges that we have with our workforce, it very much is a real problem for us. Our bread and butter member is generally a small rural community, a lot of times with a declining population, the compensation issue that I touched on. So we do have difficulty in recruiting and retaining qualified employees. Part of the reason, a majority part of the reason why we have invested so heavily in workforce development at the training center is this idea of growing your own employees. That we need to find that person that has roots in La Crosse, Kansas, or Stockton, Kansas, or Russell, Kansas, and then give them the tools to turn them into a power plant operator or a line worker. They're more likely to stay and be long-term employees for us that way. I'll move through some of this fairly quickly. We've got about a 50 or 60 page course catalog. We teach over 120 different classes in safety and professional development. And then we've got 63 cities that are involved in our safety program. We have 2 tiers of safety programs. One's kind of more like a safety program on steroids, where we actually come in and we run their safety committee. We write their policies. We do all of their various safety provisions. The idea has been, we started this 15, 16 years ago. And the idea was these cities don't have enough resources to be able to have their own safety person, but by grouping together with 10 or 12 or 15 other cities of their size, they can. And so we do almost 900 classes a year, I think. And these are classes that we deliver on site in their city. We do a number of different workshops, including our overhead school, underground school, gas operator school, a power plant school, a transformer and connections workshop, and a substation school. And then we have 4 apprenticeship or certification programs, including our line worker apprenticeship, gas operator qualification program, a power plant operator certification program, again, which is through Cali County, and then a mobile crane operator certification program as well. I won't spend any time on this, but we do an awful lot of work on the water and wastewater side as well, generally through some grant funding from KDHE. But we do a lot of workforce development and training of brand new water operators, all the way up to doing board and council training and even some one-off workshops that we can customize and deliver to members that just need something specific. So, but again, there's all bullet points of a number of the different things that we provide to our water and wastewater members there under technical assistance. I did want to mention briefly mutual aid. We are the organization that provides mutual aid to our cities, both in Kansas and then outside of Kansas. We have 186 cities or utilities that are currently participating in it. And, generally speaking, what will happen is, if you have a significant outage, I think City of Garnett had a significant outage a few weeks ago, we will get that call. Might be 2 a.m, 3 a.m, and we immediately mobilize neighboring communities to come in and assist them and get them back up and running again. More rarely, we will send crews outside of Kansas. It seems like it's getting fairly commonplace to send crews to Oklahoma and Missouri for some of their events, but we have sent folks as far as Florida, as I mentioned before. One of the things we pride ourselves on is collaboration and working with other agencies and organizations. And so we've got working relationships with all of these various entities that are shown there. I might change gears a little bit and just talk a little bit about Municipal Utility 101. So in Kansas, there are 118 public power systems. I think you saw on the slide before, 102 of those are members of our organization. So there are a handful of very small ones that are not members of KMU. There are 53 municipal gas utilities, and then again, all 525. There are 525 public water systems in the state. The interesting thing for us is the size. If you look at the median size of the 118 public power systems, it's a utility that serves 920 customers. And so that is our biggest challenge, is trying to figure out through joint action, through coming together through KMU, how do we get them the services and the wherewithal that they need to operate their utility. If you put all of those 118 together, though, we do serve 1 out of every 6 Kansan with electricity. If you broaden the scope and look at public power on a national basis, there's over 2,000 public power utilities, 48 million people, 49 states everywhere except Hawaii, and 4 US territories, and 1 in 7 electricity customers are served by public power. In probably what's the biggest honor in my professional career, I actually was installed as the chairman of the board of the American Public Power Association a couple weeks ago. And it's really interesting to get to work in that arena where you're talking about LA and Seattle and San Antonio and some really big utilities, and to try to get everyone to remember we've got a lot of small systems that we really need to focus some attention on. And we've got some small systems that are doing some really great things. So that's sort of been my goal and platform for the coming year ahead.
However, pardon my interruption, however small they may be, if I'm doing the math even semi-closely, Kansas has a pretty fair percentage. We have 118,
yeah.
118 public out of 2,000
Yeah,
nationwide.
Yeah.
We have more than our share, don't we, in terms of numbers?
we do. In fact, we have the 4th most of any state. So Minnesota has the most with 137, or no, excuse me, Iowa with 137, Minnesota 125. Nebraska, even being a 100% public power state, has somewhere shy of 125, but more than 118. So we're 4th in terms of most.
Kind of from a managed by exception perspective, when you're trying to at least focus on potential problems and how you might remedy those either prospectively or after the fact. What does that number really mean? Is there a plus or a minus associated with that number, or some combination of them by having that many?
I mean, I think there's a strength to it in terms of, being able to provide that many service to that many communities. There certainly is a strength to it. The challenge again is how small they tend to be, and trying to figure out how, from a resource perspective, you best serve them. I've been on the record as saying, over the last couple of years, I think the public power business model is stronger than it's ever been. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you needed to have that contract in place with a central generating station somewhere to be able to provide electricity in a cost efficient way to your citizens. And, with the advent of the integrated market, with the advent of solar resources and wind resources, the public power business model, being small, is not the disadvantage it used to be. In fact, in many ways, it makes you nimble and able to follow the technology maybe a little bit more closely than some of our competitors might.
In terms of some of our communities with a rapidly declining population, aging population, and nobody coming in necessarily behind them, how are they going to sustain themselves in the future?
Yeah, I think the primary approach there is joint action. And when Paul comes up, maybe one of the things that he can talk about is a project where they have actually hired a line worker crew, so that you could have a KMEA line department that could go out and service maybe 10, 12, 20 cities together, so that you don't need to find 2 line workers or 3 line workers in each of these small communities. So I mean, that's just one example. You start looking at power supply, and that's where our members look to Mark's group and to Paul's group for assistance with that as well.
I know with townships where they're not able to sustain themselves very well, that, yeah, they've been doing the same thing with the sharing of that road grader or whatever, or the maintainer out there, and a person who's actually on it is doing multiple. The question will be who gets done first.
Exactly.
So, okay, thank you.
That very much is the question, is if you have a widespread outage, who gets the line worker and the bucket truck first? And so
Right.
there's interesting problems to get through with that approach as well.
Okay.
So in Kansas, I mentioned our median size. Our largest system by far is Kansas City BPU with over 65,000 customers. Only 8 of our 118 serve more than 5,000 customers. So, and then if you go down to the very smallest is City of Radium, which I think has a population of 25 currently. So just to give you kind of a look inside what some of these communities and utilities might look like. Again, if we classify Kansas City BPU as our only large, the medium would be the next 7, which would be cities like Garden City, Gardner, McPherson BPU, Winfield, Ottawa, Chanute, and Coffeyville. And then we've got the rest of them, less than 5,000 customers, from larger versions of those like Wellington and Augusta and Pratt, all the way down to Luray, Radium, and others. But I put an asterisk by Osborne because that's as close as we get to that median size of 920. That's sort of our midpoint for them.
How, just looking at that list you had up there last, I mean, that's pretty diverse mix. I mean, you've got a lot of folks on the small side that I'm sure you can't show there. And then you have kind of those medium, but I would consider those good sized municipal systems.
Yeah.
And then obviously, very large. I mean, how involved and engaged are the large and medium in your operations versus the small that may be very reliant on you? Are they engaged in different ways? What's the difference in interaction from KMU's perspective, or KPP or KMEA? What's the difference in interaction between the large utilities, large and medium utilities versus the small?
Yeah, I would say that you probably get a bit more interaction on the medium and large size, just because they've got the resources and the staff to dedicate to some of those things. But then you start looking at like what Mark's doing with the power pool, and what Paul's doing with his EMP projects that he'll talk about. And you see these guys roll into our building every week. The small guys they're there, and they really care about it. So when they come in, they're vested in it, and they're really involved in it. So can't say that's the case for all 110 of them, but but by and large, we've got a really good group of involved and interested individuals. So, just in terms of some of the municipal utility propaganda, if you will, we're obviously community owned. Our rates are not for profit, and decision making is made by locally elected officials. The one thing that I might point out too is one thing that we pride ourselves on is transparency, and a case that showed that maybe better than any other is what happened with Winter Storm Uri. We knew and were communicating with your agency, with the governor's office, with the press, with legislators within a day of everything breaking loose on February 12th. So we do pride ourselves on being completely transparent. And sometimes that's a very positive thing for us, and sometimes that's a more challenging thing for us. But from the rate side of things, right now, municipal utility rates are looking pretty good. Our residential rate is pretty close to where the IOU average is. We do a little bit better on the industrial rate and then the overall rate as well. Again, just kind of pulling that profit motive out. Switching gears to the gas side, I had to change the classifications quite a bit here because we don't have anything approaching a Kansas City BPU. The largest would be Winfield. They're the only one with more than 5,000 customers. And then 9 that have more than 1,000, and then a lot of really small systems. And this is where we've really appreciated, at least I know I've really appreciated over the last 20 years of working with the KCC and with Leo Haynes and the Office of Pipeline Safety. You have a really great group of folks helping these systems and helping us. So, well, at this point, I'll pause unless you have any questions and turn it over to Paul Moberg.
I think we cut you off plenty of times, so I'm guessing we got our questions answered. So let's turn to Paul.
Well, good morning, commissioners.
Good morning.
Again, I'm Paul Moberg. I'm the general manager of KMEA. I've been there just short of 6 years, but I grew up in municipal power. I worked nearly 20 years at the City of Independence, Missouri, for the Power and Light Department. And before that, I worked for a consulting engineer company that's no longer in existence, but their client base was municipal systems. So municipal systems run through my blood. So, and thank you for allowing us to be here to tell our story. Kansas Municipal Energy Agency was formed back in 1980. A couple years prior to that, there was some laws passed that allowed municipals to join together with the idea to deal with power supply, to participate in large coal projects or large gas projects. KMEA's real first big project was that they participated in was the Nearman coal plant that Kansas City BPU has. That contract ended about when I came on, 2015, 2016 timeframe. And our mission is that's still our core mission is power supply for our members. We are a member organization. We are governed by our membership. We have 81 members. We have 81 board of directors. They elect an executive committee, a 9-person. The executive committee is really responsible for the day-to-day operations, and that who I report to and staff reports to. We meet monthly, the executive committee, and more often if needed. February and March, we were meeting quite often. We currently have 30 employees, and I'll go into that a little bit. We basically doubled in size over the last year, and I'll go into that a little bit more. We are project-based as compared to Mark's Kansas Power Pool, and he'll talk to you about his more of a full requirements type power pool. We are project-based. So what we do is we bring projects to our members, and they can pick and choose if they want to join. So each member has their own little power supply portfolio, and they're responsible for that portfolio. We help them with that. Of course, transmission has become a big part in the last 15 years. So we do a lot of the transmission work for our membership. The membership has pushed us to more services related services. Planning is one of our key things, but we've been getting much more active on the regulatory side, obviously with the Southwest Power Pool. And then we've been doing other things such as rates and financial forecasting. And then I'll go a little bit more into the workforce and where we're moving in that direction. So Colin mentioned our energy management projects. We do have 81 members, as large as Kansas City Board of Public Utilities is one of our members. We do not do a lot of services for them. They're large enough to do their own. Chanute is another example. That's a member where they manage their power supply. But we do have 41 cities where we manage the SPP interaction for. And we've grouped those into actually 4 little groups, but 3 main groups. And they were set up based on who they were connected to, the transmission systems. So our EMP1 group is the cities that are connected to the old Kansas City Power and Light system. EMP2 is cities generally that are connected to the cooperative systems. That would be Sunflower, Mid-Kansas, and Midwest Energy. And EMP3 is a little bit more of a hodgepodge, but most of those are all connected to the old Westar system. We do have one city, Chitopa, that's connected to the Empire District system. And we do have a couple cities in there that are connected to the co-op system. And then Eudora, we manage separately. They wanted at the time to be separated. But we provide all the same services to these 41 cities, and that's really the SPP interaction. We do have combined load points for each one of those 4 circles with SPP. That allows us to be able to trade, to move capacity back and forth without much need to do SPP transmission requests and so forth. So there is some optimal reasons why we do that.
Can you give a little more color as to why Eudora chose to go it alone? Do they have different capacity available to them, or what was behind their decision to be separated out there?
Yeah, I wasn't here when Eudora came on board. They were being led by a pretty strong consulting group, and felt that at the time that was the best, that they stand alone. We are beginning discussions with Eudora about the benefits of more than likely joining the EMP1 group, and they may do that at some point. Yeah. So they have a contract with the Evergy folks for capacity and everything and energy, so they don't need to have capacity transferred from other memberships. EMP3 is probably the best example where we have about half of those have excess capacity and the other half have no capacity. So they share in that with the other members. As Colin mentioned, the size is we're very small. Of the 41 cities, the largest is Garden City, a population of just over 30,000. The smallest being the city of Prescott at 262. But our average EMP city has a population of just over 1,700. So our power supply projects, again, this is our core business. As you go through here, you won't see any coal. Nearman was our one coal project that we had that did expire at the end of 2015. Our GRDA product is a capacity energy system product, and GRDA does have some coal in their mix. So that's the only coal that we have. So we are gas, wind, a little solar, and diesel. And then we do have a product with NextEra that's an energy/financial product, and that's to hedge on your electric prices. The 2 wind projects are the Marshall Wind Farm up in the northeast part of the state. We have 4 cities that have take 7 megawatts out of that wind farm that I believe is about a 70 megawatt wind farm. And then we have 23 cities that participate in the Buckeye Wind Farm north of Hayes, 43 megawatts. And then we have the Dogwood Energy a large gas-fired combined cycle just across the state line in Missouri. That is a joint-owned facility composed mostly of municipal systems. Kansas Power Pool is part of that project. We are Kansas City Board of Public Utilities has an ownership. The Missouri Joint Municipal Electric Utility Commission, which is the similar organization on the Missouri side. And then Kelson Energy still owns a piece of that. That project has been has been very good for our membership. We bought into that in 2018. So most of our capacity, though, comes from city-owned generation. Of those 41 members, we have 130 units that we manage. Most of those are dual fuel. Some are diesel only, and then we do have some that are natural gas. And the diesel and dual fuel really shown their value during the February event. About 25 of these generating units are actually registered in the Southwest Power Pool market. The other ones are behind the meter, but we still treat them or interact with our cities just like they possibly were in the market. So if prices go to a certain level, we ask them to run, which we did in February. So I just thought I'd give a little background on our interaction with SPP. This is something that obviously we've ramped up greatly since the SPP market came into play. As Colin mentioned, the SPP market has been good for the municipal systems. It has absolutely leveled the playing field from a power supply perspective. It provides access to energy prices at the same level that the large AEPs, OG&Es, Everg's can get to. So we have benefited by the SPP market, albeit transmission costs continue to rise, but the benefits on the energy side and capacity side far outweigh the rising transmission costs. We are transmission dependent. We have a few members that have above 100 kV transmission lines, but very few. So we have Coffeyville in Ottawa, and Garden City is going to move into a larger role in the transmission system. So we are completely.
Okay, so if you could expand on that phrase, we are transmission dependent. So therefore, I mean, just, yeah, I'd like a little bit more information there.
So none of our members, albeit Winfield, which is also a member of KPP, have facilities that qualify as transmission in the Southwest Power Pool, where you have a revenue requirement that gets funded through the SPP process. So we have none of our members, Kansas City BPU has transmission, and then Winfield and a little bit of Coffeyville. But our EMP members, none of them have transmission that qualifies under the SPP criteria for reimbursement through a revenue requirement process. All our members are in one of the zones, either the Evergy zone, the Liberty Utility zone, or the Sunflower zone. We are, for instance, on the Sunflower system, we're around at 13% of their load, but we're just a payer of that. We do not get any revenue associated with that. Similar to Evergy, we're about that same level, a little bit less, maybe 12% of the Evergy load of our members. So it's one of the things that we would like to be able to have ownership. We would love to have 13% ownership in the Sunflower system to match our load. But that's a very difficult thing to get to, but that's something that we would love to be able to have.
How would that be attained? How do you navigate that?
Right. I think one of the possibilities was having a larger entity come in and help us with that. I know Mark can expand on this if he wants to, but the Grid Alliance team was one avenue that we were looking at trying to get into the transmission ownership, where Grid Alliance would be able to bid on competitive bid projects, and with the support of the municipal systems behind that, and then we would be able to get ownership. If one of the TOs would like to sell 13% of their system, we would love to talk about that. I don't know if that would all work out. It's happened in other states where they've done joint projects with the investor owns, the cooperatives, and the municipals. So that's something that we would love to explore. And it's really a hedge against rising transmission costs if you have that ownership interest.
I'm glad you explained that because I did not understand that. So the relationship you have with SPP, do you feel like you're heard, that your concerns or your issues are addressed? And do you go through your zone when there is an issue and deal? I mean, you're small,
Yes.
but
Yeah, and that's a challenge at a member organization as SPP. We're not the only one
Right.
in this boat. The municipals in Missouri are dealing with the same issues, the ones in Oklahoma and so forth. I do feel for the most part, SPP, the governance structure is as fair as it can get. Our interaction at SPP, we have a number of our employees that are on working groups and committees. We also have enlisted a consultant, Keeley Law Firm, Heather Starnes. If you've been in SPP meetings, you've seen her down there. She's representing us as well as the Missouri municipals. So I feel, pretty good about our voice down at SPP. It's a tough road to hoe, but I feel pretty good about, our voice down at SPP.
okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
I've got a quick question on something you said that's really important, and I may ask this of Mr. Chesney as well, but you made the comment that obviously there's a concern with rising transmission costs. I mean, I think probably for someone like Westar, it may have increased bills 5 or 10% over the last 10 or 15 years. But I think your comment was that's pretty easily outweighed by the benefits of the decreasing costs of energy, which is kind of counterbalance there. And it's something I think I agree with. I mean, all of my intuition says that's the case, but I haven't ever actually seen an empirical study to really show that really clearly on the ground. So I not necessarily asking for data, but just want to confirm that's something you firmly believe that you're seeing, is that the lower cost of energy has easily outweighed the increased cost of transmission over these last 10 or 15 years as we've invested in the system, but we've also had the integrated marketplace come on.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, where we've seen that the value of the SPP market as these cities contracts, full requirements contracts have come to expiration with either Evergy or the Sunflower, we're able to come in with a power supply portfolio that's saving them 30 to 40%.
Yeah.
And so that is a function of the market, to be honest with you. The ability to to lock in energy prices, to find capacity throughout the marketplace bilaterally, the open access of the transmission system. I'm going back, back in the 2000 timeframe, but all of those things that have happened over the last 20 years has, leveled the playing field for us.
So what I'm hearing, and I'm not asking you to speak to somebody else's system, but it sounds like the lower energy cost benefits have been tremendous and obvious for those who have been able to fully access them, get out from, who are more nimble, that didn't maybe have as many existing overhanging obligations from a generation side. And you've been able to get into the market much more fully. Whereas somebody that may still be tied to some bigger generation fixed costs, their costs or their benefits might still be outweighing those transmission costs, but it may be a closer call.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Chairman French.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to finish up on this slide, we do have a 24/7 operations in our office in Overland Park. We brought that in-house in 2016. And so, we're in constant contact with our members as it relates to the SPP interaction. So I did want to highlight a little bit of the workforce that, Colin mentioned. So 2020 was a very busy year for us related to workforce. In May, we brought on our first line crew. And that was, it's a 2-man crew that is located in Dighton out west. Dighton had a long-term contract with the local cooperative to provide the maintenance and operation of their system. And they were looking at other options, and we came in. And so that crew is now in the process of being regionalized. They are headquartered in Dighton, but they are serving Jetmore, Sharon Springs, La Crosse, Cimarron. I'm missing a few cities, and we'll even go and help our larger members, Garden City, if they need an extra truck and hands. So we're very proud of that crew. It was really brought on in 2018 and 2019 when we did a strategic planning effort of the membership. And the membership, their number one priority was system maintenance. And so we are currently working on the east side of the state to set up a crew on the east side. It's going to look a little different if it currently the way it's looking like. That crew will be located in one of our larger cities, Ottawa. And Ottawa will use them a good portion of the time, but then they'll be able to go out among the smaller cities, and we'll be able to cover a lot more municipal cities on the eastern side. You get out west there, it's pretty sparse. I think, it's interesting if you were going to lease place where you would want to put a crew based on, drawing a 90-minute radius. Dighton would probably be the last place you would put it, but that's where it's at, and it's working well. Actually, it's working well. The other thing that we did in 2020 is we, as part of this maintenance need of our members, is we purchased a small engineering construction company called Mid-States Energy Works out of Salina. They're an 8-person firm with engineers and crews that actually can build substations, do power plant troubleshooting, substation troubleshooting. Their client base was municipal utilities. They were our members. So it was a very easy marriage. We purchased them on July 1st of last year during the pandemic. And with that, we've, in the last couple of years, we've done, before we purchased them, we worked with them on the City of Anthony project. After we purchased them, we did a Mound Ridge project. And these are two of the larger projects. The City of Anthony, they were being served by a 24.9 kV line that ran into Oklahoma, tied to the Western Farmers Cooperative System. That line, I believe, was over 20 miles. Their reliability was very poor. They couldn't bring in their full needs during the summer. So Anthony was running their power plants 4 months out of the year. Sunflower was building a new 138 kV line that ran right by the city. We were able to interconnect to that 138 line, build a substation. Albeit, kudos to the Mid-States Energy team. They said, hey, when we build the substation, let's create a second bay. And you think about the City of Anthony, when would they see load growth? A year later, there's a pumping station, oil pipeline pumping station that went in just outside of Anthony. We stuck a second transformer in here last year to serve that pumping station. So, and then the City of Mound Ridge, somewhat similar. They were being served off of a 34.5 kV line from McPherson. The City of Mound Ridge was looking at a little bit more reliability, better power supply. And through that process, we intertied to one of the big Evergy substations just a little bit southwest of Mound Ridge, 4 miles. We built a 115 kV line, interconnected that substation, built a new smaller substation in town to serve that city. And we actually took over on that on July 1st. So City of Mound Ridge joined our EMP3 group on July 1st, June 1st of this year. So with that, I'll turn to our Kansas Municipal Gas Agency. KMGA was formed back in 1990 through interlocal agreements. So we have an interlocal agreement that I believe it was 27 cities signed on in 1990 to be able to group together to provide gas supply. KMGA, just like KMEA, is member driven, non-for-profit. We have 49 members. We have 49 board of directors. They elect a 7-person executive committee that that meets monthly to manage the day-to-day operations. All staff of KMGA is provided by KMEA. There is an agreement between KMEA and KMGA to provide staffing and office space. We have 32 cities that own their gas systems, and 4 of those also have a power plant that burns natural gas. And then 15 of our members, we just provide natural gas to their power plant that burns natural gas. And then we have 2 associate members that are just members. We don't really provide any gas supply services for. Our core business is gas supply and managing that for our members. We operate off 4 pipelines. 28 of our 32 LDCs are tied to the Southern Star pipeline, either directly or behind the Kansas Gas Service system or the Black Hills system. One member, City of Winfield, our largest member, is on the Enable pipeline. That's generally in the Oklahoma area. We have 2 cities on the Panhandle system on the eastern side, Lacine and Lewisburg. And then we have 1 member that's on the NGPL system, City of Spearville. We do have some storage. Not all our members have storage. Probably about half of them have storage. So we manage the storage contracts, and we manage all the pipeline and delivery for our members. Similar to the KMEA side, the membership has recently pushed us into more service-oriented products. So we are doing rate support and financial review, line loss calculations, and we've been getting much more active on the regulatory side on the gas side as well. Southern Star has gone in for a very significant rate increase at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and we've grouped with a number of other end users, gas end users, to participate in those efforts. So, and as Colin mentioned, these members are extremely small. So Abbeville is, I believe, our smallest city, but there's many that aren't much bigger than that, Sylvia, Partridge, and so forth.
How much storage do you have in terms of your NCF?
I do not have that number in front of me, Commissioner, but it's going into, as we've done our lessons learned for February, that's something that we are looking to see if we can purchase more storage that would help with our hedging activities. But I don't have that
That's
number.
okay.
And thank you for mentioning my hometown,
Oh,
Partridge.
Oh, Partridge, very good, yeah. So with that, that's kind of the general overview of KMEA, KMGA. I'll turn it over to Mark unless you have any further questions.
Any questions for Mr. Moberg before we move forward? And I didn't ask last time, does staff have anything they want to ask now or wait till the end or? All right.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mark Chesney,
Morning.
CEO, General Manager, Kansas Power Pool. Like Paul, I've grown up in the municipal side of the industry. 10 years with the Grand River Dam Authority in Oklahoma. I was in Utah 10 years. I worked for the Utah Municipal Power Agency. Excuse my voice. I've been with KPP for a little more than 8 years, about 8.5 years now. In my slightly 30+ career, I spent 2 years on the retail side of the industry in Oklahoma. And so clearly most of my background is on the power supply wholesale side of the industry. I want to alter my, excuse me, I'm so sorry. I just came in from Utah last night, where I noticed that the change in environment caused some pollen intake to affect my voice, and I'm so sorry about that. But I might want to alter my introduction just a little bit to say, Paul mentioned the project based aspect of the joint action environment. The pool, as a contrast, our industry does not say that one philosophy is better than another. It really has more to do with a city's inclination to embrace a philosophy. But clearly, the pool structure is such that if a city has generation resources internally, or if a city has contracts for power supply, that those would then be pooled and would be available as resources to all the members, regardless of whether or not they had such resources. And just about half of our cities do not have internal generating resources. Maybe to circle back to the chairman's question about your comparative contrast in SPP, I would tend absolutely to agree with you. And maybe I can tie in that answer to include something that Commissioner Duffy posed. The transmission side of the industry is clearly competitive, and large transmission owners understandably have very much in the way of interest that they want to protect. However, obviously any utility has to be concerned about the cost of transmission. And so strategically, several years ago, we entered into a participation. Actually, it was a co-development agreement with Grid Alliance, based in Texas, an upstart organization, well-funded, by the way, extremely well-funded, that was comprised of people that had deep experience in transmission construction and ownership, NERC qualifications, North American Electric Reliability Council. And our belief strategically was that watching transmission costs do what they were doing and continue to largely, we felt as though it would be a good opportunity to align ourselves with someone who could give us, frankly, a bigger voice at the Southwest Power Pool, as you alluded to, Commissioner. And the results are really not entirely known just yet. I think this becomes apparent with the passage of time. But the first obstacle for Grid Alliance was to become certified in the state of Kansas. And so where the Southwest Power Pool had already issued a notice to construct in Winfield, they took on that project. And that's done now online, and it worked quite well. What remains is the identification of meaningful, significant projects, and we just don't have enough history on that yet. But philosophically, strategically, that was our aim, and continues to be. And so we felt as though it would give us a better hope to control transmission costs, and perhaps even to change our overall cost structure by perhaps importing some revenues where that was where transmission construction was projected by the Southwest Power Pool. So a lot of history yet to observe and to take advantage of, but that's our aim. In 2005, when the original founding 6 members of the Kansas Power Pool felt as though they had concerns about longevity of power supply, they organized the pool under the Municipal Energy Agency statute, which I think has been on record since the 80s, I believe. Colin, isn't that right? Or Kimberly, you may know, I did the 80s. And so we came along well after the advent of that legislation. Obviously, it was intended to secure power supply and hopefully to reduce whatever coming volatility there might be. We've grown in size from those 6. We are 24 members today. And philosophically, along with that would be the understanding that all would participate equally. All would participate equally in the paying of rates. Everyone pays the same rate. All would participate in the setting of rates. We have a board of directors as required by statute. It is a 9-member board of directors. Each city, each member has a voting delegate in the membership committee. That is the entity that approves and sets rates. That is also the entity from which members of the board of directors are selected. So our board come from our membership and are elected by our membership. Along with the progress in our history became the philosophy that we want to acquire and own assets. And we embarked on that in 2012 when we bought our first piece of the Dogwood combined cycle plant that Paul referred to a little earlier. Today, we own 10% of that. We've had two tranches, I'll use that word, of acquisition. We have 10% of that today. And so all members understand that they have equity in those assets in the sense that they are members of the pool. They have equity ownership.
Now, when,
Yes, sir.
go back to rates just a second. When you say you set equal rates across the board, are you talking just for generation and transmission, shared assets and investments? Or you're not talking about retail rates being equal? Across the
Correct.
board? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. But clearly demand and energy, our fixed costs are recovered through that demand rate that you're referring to, and energy. But yes, only on the wholesale side. That's right. Yep. All of our members have understood and continue to understand that that with the acquisition of assets, it requires debt, long-term debt. The only way that that is possible then is through a full requirements contract. We've noticed over and over again that our bond rating, after all, tax exempt financing is how our infrastructure is put into place, and our bond rating has either remained stable or has upgraded in recent years on the strength of our contracts with our members. And so that is in place and will continue to be. Is there a delay in advancing? There we are. Clearly, we are a pool in the sense that the staff, which the pool members have created, are doing long-term power resource planning, all electric load forecasting, and the acquisition of resources based on those forecasts and the strategic objectives of the pool. That is done for them. In very recent years, we have moved toward the belief that there are some additional services that ought to be offered. Let me say something about that. The Kansas Power Pool is careful to consider what services are offered. I can tell you that throughout the United States, among joint action agencies, there's a long variety of services that neither Paul nor I have or will talk about today. KPP gives careful thought to what services ought to be introduced because all members proportionally will pay the cost of those services regardless of whether or not they are receiving them. However, it is true that in very recent years, we now have the expertise on staff to greatly assist our members in all the financial aspects of maintaining and running their utility. And I'll just tell you, there are some success stories in the last couple of years. We have members today with respect to various financial ratios that they are stronger than they were. Those are things that you like to report whenever you go for a bond surveillance review with Moody's or Fitch or whatever the case may be. So we're pleased with that. There are other things that we do. We help our members in evaluating the adequacy of their distribution systems. We are offering an energy efficiency program that offers rebates for qualified installation of appliances and so forth. We even have a new program that offers retail customers a $1,500, up to $1,500 rebate for the installation of a level 2 home electric vehicle charger. That's pretty new. We've had, I think, one that's taken us up on that. But the rate at which the automotive industry is introducing electric vehicles, I think we will see that accelerate. No pun intended there, but I think we'll see that continue to ramp. We do advise our members in the various technical or technological aspects of running a utility. We do not do the work for them. You heard my good friend Paul talk about the construction entity that he now owns. We do not do that. That's certainly under review for the coming years, but that's a pretty good look at what we're doing. There are our members. I'm sorry I didn't show you a map. That would have been so easy to do, and I did not think to do that. But you can see the blue indicates those cities that do not have internal generation. And so that is just almost exactly half of our membership. All of those comments that have been made already this morning regarding size, that is absolutely reflected in our membership as well, without any surprise there. Here is our portfolio of resources. I mentioned earlier that we own just about exactly 10% of the dogwood plant. We are the off-taker in two projects. Paul made reference to the Marshall County Wind Project. We also are the sole off-taker in the Greensburg Wind Farm project. That contract is about 12 years old now, I believe. The Jeffrey Energy Center, may I just say something about that? We are also moving, I shouldn't say also, we are moving toward a time when we will be out of the coal business. For all practical purposes, KMEA is already there. That participation agreement with Evergy for the Jeffrey Energy Center, of course, Westar, when the contract was signed, that comes to an end at the end of next year. And we are about 3 years into an aggressive resource planning evaluation. We know already our intent to install quick start reciprocating internal combustion engines to complement the intermittency of renewables. Our friend Mike Ross, the Vice President of Governmental Affairs for SPP, likes to call the Southwest Power Pool the Saudi Arabia of wind. I think maybe you've heard him say that before.
A couple times.
Yeah, yeah. There is no question that renewables are a nice fit for what we are doing in the industry. It's also true that they're intermittent. And so we know we need the capacity, 59 megawatts, but we're delighted to anticipate installation of units that really will only run when there's money to be made in the market.
So let me ask
Yes,
you,
sir.
oh, so I'm sorry to
Please.
interrupt, but along that line, I mean, does the winter weather event give you any pause? You're talking about taking out that dispatchable coal and losing some diversity there in your portfolio. Does the winter weather event give you pause? Do you because you're looking at moving toward a gas system? Are you not concerned because maybe is it dual fuel? What are your considerations there? Has any of your thinking changed in your resource planning based on what happened in February?
Yes. I think it would be accurate to say we're given some pause. Fortunately, we have some time. We do have some time before these are on the ground. Before February of this year, I'll confess to you, we were headstrong that it's gas only. We know that the stability of gas, as you do, in terms of price. Now we're wondering if it shouldn't be dual fuel. We wonder also about the possibility of LNG to serve those. I think commissioners, John Q. Public does not know this, but we who are associated with the providing of electric service know that there's a trade-off. When you go to dual fuel, you lose some heat rate, and therefore you're not putting out as many megawatts. And so there are all kinds of trade-offs, I suppose, in our industry, and that's something we have to evaluate. But I think pause is probably the right word.
But you think even considering, I know you all are tracking it, that there may be some reforms coming in requirements for gas plants. Maybe you have to have fuel on site, or maybe you have to have different contractual arrangements. You still think it's economical to move in that direction? At least that's your current analysis.
Yes, we have we've learned that where coal, when we signed that Jeffrey contract in 2012, it was the least cost resource for us. Now it's the most expensive. So coal just does not work really. We're not going to move in that direction. We have learned also that we can fully take advantage of the downward pressure that renewables place on price without contracting for them. And so we don't see ourselves doing that. I mean, that's probably a long way, Mr. Chairman, to say, yes, we don't really think we're going to change our mind on that, but we certainly are going to give deeper thought to the fuel type.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So following along that,
Please.
in terms of, you're looking at the plethora of potential. What about storage batteries? Are you guys looking into that? Because I would think some of your systems would really be able to utilize storage maybe better than in some areas, or maybe I'm thinking wrong, but.
No, you're not wrong. 3 years ago or so, I think maybe was the first time in a retreat, a fall planning retreat, we talked about battery storage, and the takeaway from that meeting was the cost of installing capacity on a per kW basis is just about 3 times that of installing fossil fuel. And so a very cost-focused group like ours, we push that aside. Now, that's not true today. I mean, that has changed and it continues to come down. We have under construction right now a 1 megawatt. I mean, in utility terms, that's pretty small, but 1 megawatt battery storage installation going in Minneapolis, Kansas. It is an opportunity for us to learn. We're going to bid that into the market. My hope is that it will immediately pay for itself. We'll see if it does, but even if it doesn't, it's an opportunity for us to get more closely acquainted with the technology. I agree with you. I think that for purposes of a conversation, it could be desirable to install maybe one less reciprocating engine and perhaps several more 1 megawatt installations on battery. And so that'll be a board meeting discussion in the coming months and years.
Okay, so I'll take it to the next. So in terms of solar, where are you headed there? Because where your members are, I mean, looking at the solar map, there's opportunity as well.
Yes. Solar commenced as a discussion about 5 years ago, and we have installed quite small, very small solar arrays in a few of our cities. When I say small, I'm talking 25 kW
Sure.
small. I mean, it's almost difficult for a utility guy to say 25 kW with a straight face.
I know.
But that's
Right.
that we've done that. I have to tell you, Commissioner, we have difficulty getting past the cost component and the capacity factor component. And that is a great hesitancy for us. But I believe we are alert enough to have open eyes and open ears and be willing to at least talk. And so we have a lot more discussion we'll have to have before we do much more in the solar side of the industry as compared to natural gas. That's just where we are historically.
Well, and I thought that was an interesting comment you made, that you aren't seeing that, contractual relationships aren't necessarily an obligation to be able to take advantage of the downward pressure that renewables are putting on pricing, right? And I assume that by that you mean you can get in the market and take advantage of that at any time, right?
It really validates or illustrates rather your comment, Mr. Chairman, concerning the energy cost benefit being part of an integrated marketplace. With all of this, with all of these generators injecting, I mean, we have a language here that we talk about that the retail customer is oblivious to, and you cannot expect them to. But the downward pressure that those renewables place on the locational marginal price of energy, all utilities are buying their energy from the market to serve load. And so in that sense, we take full advantage of it. Yeah. It is, I have this discussion with my wife at home, and she glazes over pretty quickly, but it's fun
I
to
don't
come and talk
blame
to
her
her.
at all.
So, okay, and I promise so as we look at this new administration and some of the proposals that are out there, and I know that, I mean, there are roadblocks in Congress and you've got everybody's negotiating right now. But I do believe there will be project funds, either loans, grants, whatever it is, ideas of strengthening the transmission, renewable. I mean, it's kind of a rainbow of items that I think will be made available to all states and companies and cities. So are you guys kind of doing this and looking to see what's coming down the pike and how your entities might take advantage individually or collectively?
That's a discussion item in our retreat this coming September. The various components of the Biden administration, what the proposals seem to be looking like. And should we take advantage and how quickly and under what circumstances? I think I would give you a qualified yes without getting into a lot of specifics about execution, because we're not there yet. But yes, I assume that means agreeably. Are you?
You're envisioning,
Yes,
you're
yes,
looking
yes,
out there. Okay,
yes,
very
yes.
good. All right, thank you.
Mark, if I could ask
Please.
kind of a follow-on question. From a planning and managerial perspective, I think what I heard you say, and I don't intend to put words in your mouth, but I'm going to suggest what I thought I heard, was that basically you're doing some degree of, with respect to new technologies, the evolution of technology that goes beyond exactly where we are today. You're trying to anticipate those things. You're doing, I think, what I heard was some scenario planning. You're waiting to see how some of these technologies evolve before you make commitments. And if I heard you also, I think you were expressing as a conservative manager, a reluctance to be a first adopter, that you would rather maybe let others experiment with the first adoption of some of the technological advances before the power pool actually made its own commitment, so as to maybe let others chase the rabbits down the hole and you might be able to profit.
Yes, Commissioner, I think you pegged it. We have very thoughtful members on our board. I'll say that behind their backs, I'll say that. But there is a thought that we're in the very interior of the country. Let us see what happens before we make large investments. The battery storage is a perfect illustration of that. We wanted to get into it. We wanted low risk. We wanted low investment. You can't do much less than 1 megawatt as a means to try to learn. So yes, I think you nailed it.
Another overgeneralization that I think is characteristic of what you're doing is you're calculated risk takers.
Yeah.
That's what you are.
We want to be. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Some of our members pooled their contract, the system contract that Paul mentioned earlier with the Grand River Dam Authority. Paul, I don't know if you've ever seen that. We took our own guess as to how much of that is hydro and how much of that is coal and so forth. Paul's right. It's a system contract. GRDA they have wind and they have natural gas and they've got a lot of things going on there. But do you also see our city's internal generation there? In terms of our portfolio expressed in megawatts, we are heavily invested in natural gas. It's true. You see that participation contract with Jeffrey that goes away at the end of next year. You see the breakdown of the other things there. In terms of energy, now this chart, my own opinion is that this chart is a little puzzling because in the 100-year-old model of the electric utility industry, where there was a central generating station and captive customers were hanging on to it, the production of energy for the benefit of those customers was right there in your face. With the advent of an integrated market where generators are injecting into the market and then purchasing from the market, this expresses the runtime in terms of energy. This expresses the runtime of those units. It does not necessarily accurately project the energy purchased to serve the load. But we're hopeful that this is somewhat meaningful. We publish this in our annual report, as we did the other chart.
So if on that, if you would have gone back to 2008 when gas prices were extremely high,
Yeah.
would it have looked the same way, kind of the division? I mean, you take, of course, wind, you didn't have it yet, but were you still heavily reliant on that 65% or more was gas?
No,
No.
no, that's the product of recent years. In 2008, we would have been looking for more coal opportunities.
Okay.
Base load and low cost. The operating characteristics vis-a-vis the market have totally changed that. So yeah, that chart would look very differently.
So pretty much flip between coal and gas, maybe.
Probably so. If our planning had been different back in that time frame. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Maybe I have said all of this already, but the entire membership meets several times throughout the year to do some strategic planning, some low-level strategic planning. I mentioned our fall planning summit that we have every September, but they meet every year to approve the rates and to install board members as needed. I'll tell you, the board of directors considers and votes to approve the budget, and the entire membership votes to consider and approve the rate. What else? Oh, okay. And so that's a busy slide, but the agency, as an agency for the benefit of everyone, installs from time to time, has projects, whether it be power supply or transmission planning. We do a cyber academy now. We're a couple of years into that. We got money through the American Public Power Association. We got a substantial amount of money from the Department of Energy, and with that, we funded our own IT contractor to develop a curriculum, and we put all of our members. I mean, they don't have to do it, but we put all of them through a 15 module training of remediation and awareness and information sharing and so forth. And we have people that have better cyber hygiene today than they did 2 years ago. I mentioned financial reviews that we do. We did an exhaustive study beginning the fall of last year. It took us about 6 months to do it. We feel as though we can say with a whole lot of confidence to the nickel what the value is of that utility to the community. That's a very significant thing, we believe. And we were not able to do that a few years ago. We do that now. I talked about our energy efficiency program. There's one of our, Commissioner Duffy, you were asking about solar. There's one of our, you know what, that is about, that's about 12 feet by 57 feet. But we have a few of those in our member cities. We do financing for our members. This is an interesting thing. A city can have a project installed that they do not have to carry on their balance sheet because the pool does that financing for them. That's been very popular. We've done substation construction. We've done upgrades. We are right now at this very moment in the process of installing automated metering infrastructure in, I think, 6 of our cities. And the financing approach, the pool approach has been very popular, where cities are able to do things, quite frankly, that they could not do if they were acting all on their own. And so we're pleased to offer that to them. And I think the temperature is gonna lower right now. Isn't that right? Very nice to speak to you. I'll answer other questions if you have them.
Thank you, Mr. Chesney.
Well, unless there are questions, I might jump into Winter Storm Uri, and I'm going to try to be fairly brief with this and leave ample time for questions. And also I think we agreed we're going to try to do this in sort of a tag team way so that you can sort of get the overall view of what each of our entities did and what the overall impact was on each of them. This all started to play out on the afternoon of Friday, February 12th. And I know Paul and I were at a presentation down in Orlando a couple weeks ago, presenting with the general manager of City Utilities of Springfield, Missouri. And the comment that was made by all 3 of us was this was a career defining moment for all of us, and certainly something that we never want to see or experience again. In fact, it seemed like every night for about 3 months, our little group was on Zoom calls from about 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. And we would just generally look at each other and go, man, you don't look good. Are you feeling all right? You don't look good either. So we are very much hoping that this does not happen again. And we are wanting and pursuing policies to try to make sure that is the case. I do want to offer a huge thanks to all of you, all 3 of you commissioners and Chair French for being so involved in our situation and helping to get us the resources that we needed in such a short manner. I know I had one of our members refer to the winter storm as basically our 500-year flood and EF5 tornado all wrapped up in one, and yet there's no damage to show the community. But from the financial aspect of it, was so profound. In the early days or the early hours of it, even that Friday afternoon and that Saturday morning, we were very concerned about human life, about keeping gas flows going and trying to avoid some of the terrible things that were happening in Texas. And so we had, from that point forward, basically a parallel approach of how do we keep gas flowing at all costs, making sure we're curtailing anyone who can curtails, but keeping homes warm and avoiding property damage, keeping folks alive. And it was very serious. I mean, I know all of you probably remember the Denison situation. They were in the news talking about possibly even going bankrupt. We were hearing that from a number of our cities about no fund warrants and bankruptcy and disbanding. And so it was obviously an incredibly serious situation for us. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Paul, and he can kind of walk through sort of how we got there.
Before I go into I'm not going to be as smooth as Colin, but this was hell frozen over. And it was a career defining moment for all of us. But because of who we are, Kansans coming together, we're going to get through it. So I do want to thank the commission, for acting as quickly as you did. You passed an order that instructed KGS and Black Hills to help us. We were in communications with those folks in that first week. Fortunately, we were able to get through it on our own, but we were hanging on by our fingernails. So thank you. And to the staff as well. We were in constant communications with Leo and Pat Renner, during those critical days. So I'm sure you probably have seen this map. It's interesting to see that SPP, 99% of that is in that blue area, which is an area for a few days where the temperatures are going to drop below zero. The thing that's interesting is this was a huge geographical area and it lasted almost 2 weeks. So those two things combined put us in the situation we're in. I saw some stats where there was over 9,000 daily low temperatures broken or tied, over 100 all-time low temperatures, all the way from North Dakota down into Texas. More locally in the Kansas City region, we went 11 days where the temperature did not get above 15 degrees, which is an all-time record. So that kind of gives you, the idea of this hell frozen over. So this is a chart of the daily Southern Star Pipeline gas index. Going back to 98, I'm sorry, you can't make out those dates down there, but it goes back to April 1 of 1998 all the way up to April of 2021. I pointed out a few of the high gas prices during that period. The highest that we had ever seen on Southern Star was just over $31 during the polar vortex of 2014. That was for one day. And then the next highest that we've seen was back in 2003 at just over $18. Southern Star price on Friday that posted for the 4-day weekend of Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, since Monday was the presidential holiday, was over $300. And then the price that posted on that Tuesday jumped over $600, over 20 times higher than it has ever been. So I'm sure you've heard the word unprecedented. I wish I could come up with a better word, but this is absolutely unprecedented. I do want to share at this point kind of what we went through from a KMGA standpoint. That's where it hit first. As Colin mentioned, on February 12th, the first indication February 11th, the price posted on Southern Star at $45. So the highest that we'd ever seen. On Friday, we got a collateral call from one of our gas suppliers. Needed $1 million to continue to supply us gas through the weekend. We were able to post that $1 million. We spent that Friday morning arranging for gas supply for the next 4 days, because that's how you buy gas through the weekend. On Friday, you buy it for Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Again, with the holiday, we had to buy gas for 4 straight days. We were able to get that done. But on that Friday afternoon, I would have bet my house that we would have had other suppliers on Monday or Tuesday asking for a collateral call, and we would not have been able to post it. So that's when we reached out to Colin from the advocacy legislative standpoint. We brought in our regulatory attorneys on that Friday afternoon to start talking to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And we did everything possible with the number one goal to keep gas flowing to our members. It was a life and death situation. And so for the next week, that was our primary focus. And we got through it. We were able to do it. Financial damage was significant. And and I know we'll go into that. We were, thank God for this legislature to come up with the city utility loan program. That allowed our cities to be able to access those funds, which allowed us to pay our suppliers. Kind of moving into how that affected the electric industry. Obviously, it's a direct correlation. As those gas prices jumped, again, this is that same Southern Star chart, just shrunk down for the month of February. The blue line is the locational marginal price for our EMP3 group, just as a proxy of what we were seeing. Basically, all our load was at these similar type prices. You can see that the price was over $1,000 a megawatt hour for over 6 days, and reached as high as almost $4,000 a megawatt hour. So on the electric side, I mentioned, each of our cities has their own little power supply portfolio. So each one of our cities was impacted differently. So this is a chart for that 2-week period. SPP bills on a weekly basis. So it happened to cover, it took that winter storm covered 2 weeks. This is the impact to the cities for that 2-week period. A negative is that our cities were paid for over their load for what they generated. So the negative red is a positive indicator here. Obviously, the positive numbers are what the cities owed during that 2-week period on a dollar per megawatt hour basis. The highlighted blue are the cities that have internal generation that is able to burn diesel fuel. Either it's diesel fuel only or dual fuel. And you can see that the cities that had internal generation, they had a natural hedge, a good hedge. Some of them were able to generate more than their load and was able to profit to some degree or create a margin. We have a couple cities that only have internal gas. They were unable to either get the gas because of constraints or because of the cash flow issue dealing with the price of gas. So even if they were able to run, they really weren't going to be able to hedge what their load costs were. And these are the cities that do not have generation. And I will point out one city that you mentioned, the city of Eudora. They have a somewhat of a load following product, which basically kept them out of the energy market. So they're city 15. But generally speaking, that if you didn't have diesel generation, a certain percentage of your energy requirements was coming off that daily or hourly LMP prices. So to summarize, for KMGA, we had $43 million in extraordinary costs in February. To give you a sense of that, that is nearly 4 times our annual budget that was spent in that week period. That affected those 32 cities that have gas systems. Our cities that had power plants, they did not run those, so they did not see those high prices. 28 of those 32 cities went and tapped the city utility low interest loan program, which in all our cities paid our February bill to them, which allowed us to pay our upstream suppliers. We have paid those under protest. Each city developed their own recovery plan, rate plan to cover those costs. And each one has done it somewhat differently. Some have automatically spread it out over a number of years. Some have sent a bill and then had the customers come in and work out a payment plan. Some have done it on a more of like a meter charge, equal installment for each customer. Some have done it on a per unit basis. So it's been done various ways. We are cooperating with the investigations, Kansas Attorney General's investigation, the Federal Energy Regulatory investigation, and I'm monitoring those to see what comes out of that. Colin will go into this a little bit, but we will be championing new policies at the appropriate places, so that this doesn't happen again. And we are currently, haven't finalized it yet, but given this new event of seeing gas prices go to $600, obviously we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't revisit our purchasing strategy. So we'll be implementing new purchasing strategies to counter if this happens again. And that includes, optimization of storage as well as hedging products and so forth. On the KMEA side, wasn't nearly as significant. That 2-week period, we incurred $19 million in power costs for those 41 cities. Again, each one was affected differently. And as you saw, the diesel generation was a difference maker for these cities. 12 of our cities on the electric side obtained a state loan. Cities developed their own recovery plans, just like on the gas side. Of course, it wasn't as significant on the gas side. You know, we have some cities that are spreading that out over 8 to 10 years. On the electric side, it's pretty much limited to a year or less. You know, we're doing a lessons learned on the electric side as well. We are looking at the, you know, each member's risk profile, you know, where are they comfortable with the exposure to the market. We're making some operational tweaks. We had during those days, our 24/7 operation was working 48/7, it seemed like. You know, we had over 70 generators running during that time frame. And we were coordinating all that. One of the things that we want to work with on the rolling blackouts, us not being a transmission owning system, we didn't get any orders from Southwest Power Pool to do rolling blackouts. That came through Evergy Sunflower, but it did impact a number of our cities. And I know each one of those entities is going through their rolling blackout plans, and you know, we want to be a part of that and tell them our challenges with what happened there. We had a couple of generators that got tripped off because of interruption by the TO. And Colin's going to go into this, but we turned over every rock we could on both the gas and electric side. It did take all of Kansans to get through this, especially on the gas side. And I think that's probably a good segue to Colin to take over.
Yeah, so as Paul mentioned, we were really trying to identify any and all strategies that could potentially get any form of relief for our members, for their citizens, and obviously to Paul's comment of making sure that we have gas flows in those early days. So, everything from the KCC emergency order that was so important to us, looking at the Defense Production Act, even Natural Gas Policy Act, is there a way to get some sort of a cap? Is there some sort of way to get a retroactive cap? All of those things, as you well know, probably even better than I do, come with so many different strings attached to them that to try to unravel is incredibly difficult. We were in constant conversations, as Paul mentioned, with you, with your staff, with Senator Moran and his staff, Senator Marshall, the governor's office, you name it. Just about every day we were talking to these folks and trying to find any possible means to get relief for our citizens. Just real quickly, give you a snapshot of what happened with the city utility low interest loan program. I think at the end of my career, I will look back at February 12th, 2021 as an important day, and March 3rd, 2021 as another important day. We actually started that day at 8 o'clock in the morning with a special hearing. It was turnaround week, so it was hastily pulled together. Had a hearing on a bill to provide and set up the loan program. Moved immediately to the House floor, got 124-0 vote on that. Moved from there to the Senate Republican caucus to try to make sure that we could get it onto the floor of the Senate. May have gotten beat up a little bit in there, but lived to tell the tale. And it emerged on the Senate floor, 37-1 vote, signed by the governor less than 12 hours after it was introduced. And during all of this, we were working with the treasurer's office to put together what the loan application process would be. And by the next morning, we were standing in front of a bank of cameras, which were a place I'm not terribly comfortable being, trying to explain that it was available, and had people applying within hours of that. So the timeliness of it was so incredibly critical, and to have the legislators and legislative leadership in the governor's office move so quickly on something that was so incredibly important to our folks, we couldn't be more grateful. As you probably know, it was a $100 million fund. Cities could borrow at 0.25%. That's variable for up to 10 years. There was a trailer bill that was introduced towards the end of the session, Senate Bill 86, that took 20 million of that original 100 million and made it available to those third-party natural gas customers. We were also able to get language in that trailer bill allowing municipal energy agencies, KPP or KMEA, to apply directly for loan funds as well. The remaining funds were swept over to the wholesale customers on June 1. And so, as the city utility program was tied up, we had 54 cities and one joint action agency, KVP, requesting a total of $78.4 million. And like Paul, I can't reiterate enough how important this was to keeping our members solvent and buying the time to try to figure out a way to get through this. So Mark, I'll turn it to you.
KPP is not in the gas business, but we felt this nevertheless, because I don't need to tell you, the cost of gas finds its way into the cost of energy. And so our extraordinary cost was $20 million. I'll pause here and tell you that our cities, with their generators, they also could not get gas. It doesn't even need to be said. And so those that were able to, they ramped up their engines, diesel. And we put the pencil to that, and we're pretty sure that if that had not happened, our cost would have been $40 million. So happily, there was a bit of a silver lining in that. That $20 million is personally to me a very curious number, because in 2012, KPP embarked on a pretty aggressive effort to reserve cash. As a matter of fact, at times it was not necessarily a happy discussion, because obviously there's a cost to that. We did it, and we did it on the belief that surely something extraordinary is going to happen someday. Well, we burned through every nickel of our cash. And that was a little concerning to me, because February was not even over and Moody's was breathing on us. What has happened to you? What are you going to do? Where does it go from here? We didn't even have the costs tallied. And that really bothered me, because I knew that in a couple of months' time, we were going to be going to the bond market on some projects. That we completed that just last week, or the week before, actually, $15 million. AMI and some of those other things that you saw photographed there on the screen a little while ago. Well, we put together what we thought was a very sound recovery plan. A penny surcharge, a penny per kilowatt hour. How do you arrive at that? Well, we know historically how many kilowatt hours we're going to sell in a year's time. And so we calculated that a penny gets us $20 million in just about 24 months. And then we told Moody's, and they seemed to be suitably impressed. They downgraded, excuse me, they did not downgrade us. They did change our outlook from stable to negative. Well, you can't hold that against them. We went through all of our liquidity, but and by the way, I don't know if there were any utilities in the Southwest Power Pool that did not have their outlook changed. But anyway, at that moment, it did not even occur to us that we would be able to take advantage of this loan fund that Colin speaks of. And we really, really, really take our hat off to Kimberly and Colin and everyone associated with them in their work. Happily, in June, we discovered that we were eligible to apply for that loan with the result of the trailer bill. I told our board, look, Moody's is pretty okay with us, but nobody on their review committee believes for a minute that we're going to recover our liquidity anytime soon. We need to apply for this loan. And we did, and we got our $18 million, and voila, our liquidity is completely restored. Last week before last, our bond grading had not changed, but the outlook went from negative to stable. And so we're delighted to report that and feel as though we have pretty good standing to move into the future. That's all I have on that topic, unless there are questions for me.
Real quick on the loan fund.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure how the negotiations went or how that was, but was our loan fund for the state of Kansas similar to what other states did? Were other states doing the same thing, jumping in? And is this something that needs to maybe continue on for other types of emergencies?
Yeah, to your first point, we know that there was one other state, the state of Illinois, that had a $15 million fund that was first to the table before ours. I will also tell you that I know Missouri and Iowa and Minnesota and Oklahoma were very jealous and envious that we were able to get done what we got done here. Since that time, I know Missouri has gotten something in place. I believe Oklahoma recently has gotten something in place as well. We're hopeful that we would never need something like this again, but I don't know, given where everything is and the pace of changes to the industry, whether that's true or not. So, from a crystal ball perspective, having that as a possibility down the road may be a necessity. I don't know. I will too, as long as we're throwing out a few thank yous here and there. I mean, that legislation was Speaker Pro Tem Blaine Finch and leadership in the legislature that got it done. We couldn't be more thankful of them for doing that. Yes.
In response to the Kimberly Swati. In response to the amount, I don't want anyone to walk away from this conversation thinking that we just pulled $100 million out of the air. Illinois' amount, I think, was proportional to what their costs were expected to be, and our request was proportional to what our costs were expected to be. So that was where the 100 million came from. And there were times when it was asked, do you need more? And we consistently came back and said, no, we think that this is where we will be budget wise. And there were cities that didn't apply, that handled, we pushed everyone to say, please use as much as your reserves as prudent. So in reality, we probably would have hit that $100 million number, or if some things had gone differently at SPP, that $100 million number probably would have come to fruition. But in the end, we're very grateful that we were able to have access to any funding at all. So I just wanted to make my point on that.
Well, let me conclude by just talking very briefly about some of the policy considerations that we have been throwing around. And I know our group is involved in national efforts, both at the American Public Power Association and the American Public Gas Associations. I'm putting together first sort of a straw man of what are some possible avenues to make sure this doesn't happen again, and trying to rank and see where there might be support for those. One of the things that I keep telling our members is it would sure be nice to have something like a circuit breaker, if you will, on natural gas prices. And if it seems to be good enough for the stock market, the very bastion of capitalism, is there a way that we could have something like that in gas prices and the gas market? The problem there is you stop trading on Wall Street. You can't stop trading with gas. So I don't know that one carries as much water as we would like to see. Some of the other things that have been talked about is actual presidential authority to cap natural gas prices in an emergency with perhaps even some level of limited retroactivity. Obviously requiring winterization of natural gas production and transportation. Coordination of the electric and gas markets would be ideal. And then requiring electric utilities, this is a smaller one, but requiring electric utilities to not curtail natural gas production facilities during rolling outages. So those are just a handful. I mean, we probably have about a 10-page document from each of the national organizations trying to dive in some depth as to, what do we pursue? And those those conversations are still very early on, but progressing.
Well, does that get to the end of your slides? Well, thank you for that. And obviously that last slide tells a lot. I think we're thinking about all the same things here and what we can do to support those sorts of reforms as well. So look forward to continuing dialogue on that. Well, let me turn to my fellow commissioners real quick and see if they have any final questions or comments for you. Commissioner Duffy? You good? Commissioner Keen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a couple prefatory thoughts. There's one problem with 100 and 500-year events, and that is the day after that event's over, the next 5 or 100 years begin. And there's no assurance that you have to wait that period of time for it to reoccur. So I know you're aware of that, but that's a precarious problem. You're hoping that it never happens again, certainly on your watch, but to be sure. Let me, at the outset of my questions here, thank each one of you personally. Colin, Paul, Mark, Kim. Obviously, you've risen to a very difficult task. You would like to never relive the winter of 2021. And the same is true of virtually all Kansans, I think. But I appreciate very much the candor with which you have educated us this morning and provided us with information. It's just incredibly helpful to us. We certainly empathized with you. We had a non-jurisdictional situation here that was affected by jurisdictional utilities. And I know we were frustrated in the sense that we couldn't do more. If there was more to be done, that we couldn't have maybe shared part of the load, the burden that you had. Let me ask these questions about this event. There's a lot of experience I'm looking at here. Why was gas a no-show? We can say, obviously, we had some freeze-offs. That's kind of a hard one to buy off on in a lot of respects, because although the duration of this event was longer than what we've experienced recently, there have to be other reasons. What would be your assessment about why gas was a no-show?
Wow, I would love to really know the answer to that, but I'll give you Paul Moberg's
Please.
take on it. There was limited supply. There's no doubt about that. Texas, we heard from anywhere from 40 to 50% of the production was dealing with issues, couldn't produce. Not as high in Oklahoma. We did have some facilities there in Kansas that had wellhead freeze-offs. So I do believe there was limited supply. Demand was at an all-time record when you look at the region as well. So economy 201 was in play. As far as we know, everybody that needed gas for human needs was able to get the gas. So other than, issues in Texas because of weather events, but I don't really know, why the prices went as high as they did. I do not know. And, we're hopeful that FERC will shed some light on that. Unregulated market, as we all know. But really, what caused the price to go 20 times higher than it's ever been on Southern Star system? Yeah, 200 times normal, 20 times the highest it had ever been. But I wish I had the answer.
Sure. Well, we're all searching
Yep.
for that answer, but I was interested in your take.
Yeah.
And I thank you for that. I think as we look at these policy considerations, I was struck by several of the bullets that you have here, the last one of which was to require electric utilities not to curtail natural gas production facilities during rolling outages. I think that's really important. I'm rhetorically wondering if one reason natural gas didn't show was because it wasn't prioritized to not be curtailed. Perhaps inadvertently, but nonetheless, and that would not only be production, frankly, it would be processing and transmission. I would expand the horizon beyond production. The other bullet I want to ask you about, that would be the coordination of electric and natural gas markets. And I think that's a great suggestion. By whom and how? What do you contemplate? That's one of the easier questions I had for you, Colin.
Well, as I mentioned, I'm gonna defer the hard questions to Paul and Mark. So I'll take-
Fair enough.
I'll take that first one. I mean, what we're hearing is, particularly from our colleagues in Texas and Oklahoma, is just how important to make sure that those gas systems are prioritized. I think we did have one situation in Kansas where it was in Attica. We needed to make sure that one of our electric utilities, City of Attica, was providing power to liquids removal facilities. Something like that. Or dehydrator. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. But I'll let these guys maybe take a shot on the electric gas market, since you guys delve and play in those arenas more than I do.
Well, I'm going to confess right up front, I don't know how to answer the question by whom and how. I mean, the initiatives that we've laid out, it seems to me that is a long discussion. I can remember, and maybe others in the room can, that when the Enron investigations began years ago, their comment was, hey, it's a market. Well, it is a market, but it's an unregulated market. And so in terms of enforcements on non-curtailability and capping and so on and so forth, I mean, I think that's the fundamental to that's the starting place for the discussion. Certainly it'll go wherever it goes from there, but we got to take it. We got to take it seriously as a nation. I have nothing substantive as far as a precise indicator, but maybe you do.
No, I do not, but SVP, has tried efforts to try to coordinate that. It's going to take somebody at, either the FERC or somebody at the national level to force that coordination to happen. It's a huge mountain to climb, I think. But is there something that we can do to improve the interaction between the electric and gas industry? I think there is some minor steps that are doable. But it is going to take, somebody like FERC to push that down onto the gas and electric industry.
Yeah. Thank you for that, those responses. I think I heard one or more of you say that prospectively, and maybe retrospectively, had there been hedging, had there been perhaps storage, more, if we have some storage issues maybe resolved, if there was some kind of hedging or there's some kind of fixed price contracts, would that have potentially mitigated it retroactively, or will it potentially do that prospectively?
The answer to that is yes on the gas side for both of those. Knowing what we know today, the Monday morning quarterback, could we have done some things differently to minimize the financial impact? Absolutely. Absolutely. Are we moving forward on implementing those type of strategies going forward? Absolutely. Again, our purchasing strategy that we had in place, and it's been in place for a number of years, never anticipated a run up in price as high as it went to. And now that we know that it can do that, we will implement hedging activities, storage optimization, hopefully more storage, all types of factors to minimize that financial impact if it does happen again.
Yeah, very good. With the risk of, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, I think that would really put kind of an exclamation point on one of your focuses, which is joint action. Being able to do that through that kind of action. Just a couple more questions and I'm finished. Let's focus just for a moment on this dogwood plant. That's a big deal here, obviously. 62 kW, as I recall from your slide. Oh, MW, I'm sorry. I was caught up in one of your anecdotes here, I think, but yes, let's make that MW. Was it operated during this period?
It was, we felt the supply issue. There were about every 18 hours, we were under threat of a collateral call, and we did respond to those. There was, I believe it was Thursday. I think it was Thursday. The owners by Thursday had gotten together several times. The people that Paul mentioned, the City of Independence, others, KCBPU, others. On Thursday, we made a joint decision that, hey, my credit card is tapped out. We're not going to run. I think the numbers are a little bit fuzzy. Paul may remember better than I do, but I think the cost of running Thursday only was about $50 million, or would have been. And it did not run on Thursday. My memory is, and this is anecdotal, I wasn't personally involved in the discussions with SPP, but there certainly was concern by the Southwest Power Pool that, look here, this unit has to run for purposes of reliability. And it would have if the financial circumstances had been different. So yes, Commissioner, it ran, it was available. Moody's wanted to know from us, what are you going to do differently next time to get ready for this? And our short answer was, hey, this unit was available the entire time. It was on the production and the transportation side, as we've talked about already. But my memory is it was only Thursday when it did not run in that week, February, whatever that day was. What 16th, 15th, something like that.
Were those natural gas costs associated with that directly tied to the market volatility?
Oh, yes, yes. I think we saw, again, my memory's a little fuzzy, but I think we saw 625, something like that, a decatherm, an NMBT.
Yeah.
It really was a cash flow issue. Our energy manager was requiring us to post a huge dollar amount to be able to go and try and go get the gas. And we didn't have the cash flow to do that.
February 17th. Gas was $620. So you would have had to bought the gas.
Yeah.
And purchase gas at $650 a megawatt. It's, yeah, to sell for the next day. That's the day.
Maybe it was Wednesday. Yeah.
But
Wednesday was the day the gas prices were so high. $620.
But gas was always available, right? Whether you could buy it or not, it was there. You were being told it was there.
We believe so. When the collateral call came, it was like, we can't do that. So, that was for the energy manager, gas manager to try to go get it. They didn't try to go get it after we didn't post that collateral. We had some difficulties on February 12th getting gas. We were able to get enough to run half that unit through the weekend. So the Dogwood plant was not at full output because of limited gas. We were able to get enough to run one unit through that 4-day weekend.
One final question. I appreciate the indulgence of all of you and my fellow commissioners as well. My last question is a little bit anecdotal, probably comes from just being an old guy. My home for almost 30 years has been Winfield. Winfield took a $13 million hit. I credit the city the city administration, frankly, for spreading that hit out over a 60-month period. I think that that was very proactive, and I know they were and still remain frustrated by many aspects of that. Going back a few more years, I spent a pretty good part of my youth in McPherson. And I can recall then, and as I understand it anecdotally now, the BPU does one heck of a job of providing city utilities to the city of McPherson. Couple of short questions. Did McPherson didn't witness this hit, did it? Am I correct in that?
Yeah, so McPherson did sustain a pretty sizable hit,
Did it?
but they do not operate a gas utility.
Okay.
So Winfield's main exposure was due to their natural gas utility. I mean, McPherson has a really interesting and compelling story to tell, though. They had diesel generation running, and because of the proximity of the refinery there, they literally had tanker trucks running 24/7, loading, unloading, loading, unloading. And it was my understanding that they even were able to free up some of the trucks that they had to get down to Evergy facilities to keep power plants in diesel as well. If I remember correctly, and I may mess up the numbers a little bit on this, I think Tim Meyer, their general manager, told me that they thought they were basically 90% insulated from the market going into this. And that 10% still cost them about $10 million.
Wow.
Like that. So,
Wow. You showed us in one of the presentations, the relative cost to the ratepayers of electric service from the co-ops
Mhm.
and the municipals. Just for curiosity, is the cost in McPherson below the average?
yeah,
Substantially below the average?
They help our average quite a little bit, yes.
McPherson's a wonderful place. I love living there through part of my youth. It's still a wonderful place, and you're lucky. I think you live there, do you not?
I unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, I got remarried. I shouldn't say unfortunately, because that might get me in some trouble. So I am commuting from Park City, but I'm very happy that our business is
Very
in
good.
McPherson and raised a family there.
Thank you all for your indulgence of my questions. Thanks for being here.
Okay, so this storm was predicted a week out. I mean, it was out there. Were you discussing your options at that point when you saw the duration that they were predicting the temperature to be extremely low? Were you all visiting about, hey, we probably should buy up, hedge? And why didn't you?
Yeah, we were to a degree. I will say we were to a degree. Our purchasing strategy could handle a normal price in spike. We were absolutely, as the weather was coming in, we were securing gas supply. We were procuring it on the daily index because it gives you the most flexibility. You can cut it if you want, you can increase it if you need to. And so that was our strategy going into it based on past history. And as you know, we hit the February 12th or the 11th, the prices were so high. If you tried to secure a fixed price, it was at those levels. So yes, we were discussing it. We stayed with our strategy that we had in place that had worked for years. Looking back on it, if we had known, if we could have predicted $300, $600 prices, we probably would have reacted a little differently.
And I do thank you all for coming. I think this was very educational and beneficial for me and for you taking the time. It is important that we understand how you operate and who you are. So I thank you.
We've run over our 11 o'clock, but I want to just look out briefly to staff and see if anything in the presentation sparked a question or a comment from any of them. Terry?
I just have one.
And try to, if we have a microphone floating around here, or just run up to the podium since we've got folks online.
Okay, I think this probably is to you, Paul. It's kind of a follow-up to some of the hedging questions. When you talk about there could have been different hedging products that you purchased, can you explain what some of those look like as compared to like the first of the month hedging products, and what's the cost to those? And what do you, so it's always about money probably. So just curious about what they look like and how much they cost.
Is this on? Okay? Yeah. So yeah, our strategy going into the event was based on fixed first of the month and daily. We weren't purchasing any, I'll call them insurance products, daily call options, things like that. So we're going to continue with a similar approach, using fixed first of the month and to a more higher level with those two kind of products. We did go out and look at insurance products after the February event. Most companies are not offering those anymore. And the ones that are, they want a very, very high price that is basically pricing it, out of the market. So we'll be, our overall natural gas supply costs will go up going forward. At this point, we can't estimate what that will look like, but it will stabilize prices, giving this, this new event that we've seen.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks for stealing my question too.
And identify yourself, please.
I will, thanks. So yeah, I'm Justin Grady, work in the utilities division. Good morning. Let me make sure it's still morning. Thanks for your guys' presentation. So just a quick follow-up by Paul, the insurance products you're referring to would be something that would limit volatility to the daily index price. Is that what you're referring to? And what I keep hearing is that those are very illiquid, expensive financial products, right? Both prior to the event and even more so now. Did I hear you say that? Or okay, because that's always the question, right? Everybody says, well, why weren't you hedging? But you were hedging. You were just hedging to the first of the month price. But I'm not finding really anyone that was hedging to the daily index price. And yeah, that's just.
And we weren't either. And looking at it going forward, it's too expensive to do that from our standpoint, from the membership standpoint.
Okay, so the option is more storage or higher utilization of maybe some sort of a swap or a future price or something that's tied to a fixed price, right?
That's correct. We'll be doing a higher percentage at fixed and a higher percentage at that first of the month index is our hedging strategy. And whether that is locking in physical supply or using financial hedging, we're still working through that, how our purchasing strategy would look like, but that's the bones of it.
Okay, and then I just have one other question for you, Mark. On you mentioned that the recovery plan that KPP came up with was 1 penny per kilowatt hour, which sounds like that spreads the extraordinary costs over 2 years. Did that change at all when you guys took advantage of the low interest loan program, or did you take out a 2-year loan? Or
The terms of that loan are 5 years. And I think everyone knows that the interest rate was floored at 0.25%. Our strategy is simply to retire that loan coincident with the surcharge revenue. And so we're going to pay that off well ahead of 5 years. But we did not change the surcharge is still in place, and that will continue.
okay, thanks. So 1 penny per kilowatt hour, that is a rough increase in your average retail rate, is that approximate a 10% increase in rates or?
Well, the energy rate typically, I mean, for purposes of a conversation, is about 30 mils. And so it's probably in terms of the energy increase, it's more than 10%. It was not a researched number. And it wasn't a focus group number. We just felt some pressure that we put upon ourselves to preserve our bond rating and pay that off absolutely as quickly as possible. We expected maybe that there would be some pushback. I'm slightly stunned to report to you there's been no pushback, but we're only about 3 months into it. But part and parcel to the resolution to do that is that it would be reviewed by the board each month. And it's we've got a supplemental financial report that we're now doing. And we've got a lot of confidence that it'll run 24 months at this point.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I was just curious what your guys' experience had been and what kind of a customer rate impact that was. We are wrestling with many of those decisions ourselves, and others of those plans are going to come in soon. So for me, it's instructive to hear how a membership governed, private member owned and governed organization has made those decisions and wrestled with things like customer bill impact and over what period of time to recover the costs and whatnot. So thanks.
So real quick, that 0.25% interest rate, is that fixed throughout the life of the loan?
I don't believe it is. The legislation, and maybe this is not a question for me to answer, but the legislation said 2% below market,
2% below market.
not to be below 0.25.
Okay, all right, but right now it's at 0.25 and has been.
The first loan payment that we've made reflects 0.25.
Okay.
Repayment, I mean.
And how are you communicating to your customer? Is this through phone calls, bill inserts? I mean, your email, how are you communicating?
Everyone is on a listserv. So city clerks and city administrators hear from us many times throughout the month. Corporate newsletter. We have a monthly member call where we talk about, statically, we talk about the energy cost adjustment each month and how that's arrived at. But part of that call also is to relay anything that's hot or receive requests or questions from them. So there's quite a bit of robust interactive, communication each month, several times throughout the month, each month.
Mr. Fedotin, did you have a question?
Yeah. Thank you. I think this is.
You're not on.
Of course, okay, great. I thought I was picked the one microphone that didn't work. This I think is directed to Paul, but if I want to follow up on the recovery plan issue that Justin Grady was raising. If I understood the presentation correctly, KMGA and KMEA, but more so KMGA, has given a lot of flexibility to its members to develop recovery plans. And so the recovery plans are different durations and all that. And I'm wondering, have you gotten feedback from your members on what aspects of the recovery plans are most popular with the customers or common traits that are getting more positive feedback from customers?
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, the members in our structure, it was really up to them to figure out how to pass on the costs that they incurred to their customers. It's actually very interesting. We had a number of members, especially on the gas side, that sent the governing body decided that the fairest way was to calculate a bill for February for those customers. And so they, sent out a bill with, a high dollar amount with varying, each city did it a little differently, but, communicating that we can spread this out. It's amazing how many folks have decided to pay that bill upfront. And, we've heard it from businesses have decided that that's a tax advantage for them to pay it off in 1 year. I got my stimulus check. I'm turning it over to the city to pay my bill. But we laugh, but it is kind of, it's very, very heart tugging. So I know one city said about almost a third of their customers just decided to pay it off. I think part of it is, Midwestern morals that, I got a bill, I'm paying it. So, but we also heard a lot of negative feedback from those large bills as well. Because it was that shock factor that I've got a $1,500 bill here. How can this be? And I'm on a fixed income. The city, allowed to spread that out. And again, each city did it a little differently on how they did that. But so it's been a mixed review. Again, a number of our cities thought the fairest way was to calculate that bill, and versus just doing a surcharge to all customers, whether they are new to the system or not. But we had cities that did that as well, that they just immediately did not send out a large bill. They spread it out. A lot less public negative pushback
So
with that.
no, I don't mean to interrupt, but so perhaps what you're saying is one of the traits of a good program is some flexibility to allow folks who want to pay it off to do so, and to work with folks that want to take advantage of the longer term.
Absolutely. I mean, and that was an experience, not just in a number of cities where we did see that. Your city of Winfield, just because of how their billing system worked, and their meter reads are right in the middle of this event, that they couldn't calculate to an accurate bill for those customers. So they had a number of customers that came saying, "Hey, just tell me what my number is, I'll pay it off." And they're like, "Unfortunately, we can't do that." So that flexibility was huge.
So a home ratepayer, a residential ratepayer can deduct that off their state income tax?
I don't know about a homeowner, but a business.
I know a business, but that's what I was asking, if the homeowner could.
I don't know if they can. I assume if they have a business that they're running out of their home, they'd be able to, but as a homeowner, I'm not sure.
That's a thought.
Absolutely.
To follow on that point. So from the city loan program, there was the $100 million. And then of course, 20 million was taken and moved over to allow wholesale customers to use that fund. And those monies became available on June 1st. And as of yesterday, there has not been a single business, nonprofit, school district, any entity that was able to actually apply. So that $20 million is still sitting there sans an application. I think to Paul's point, it's just the opportunity to have flexibility is really important. It's not necessarily that you're going to take advantage of it.
Thank you.
Anything else further from staff? Jeff McClanahan?
Yeah, Jeff McClanahan with the Utilities Division. I just have a quick question. KPP's presentation, and shifting gears here, indicated they did some cybersecurity training. Colin, is that a service you offered? Maybe I missed that in the bullet point, but is that something that is also provided by your organization?
Well, thankfully, we've been able to ride on the coattails of Mr. Chesney over here. And he opened up that cybersecurity training to not only the KMEA membership, but also the KMU membership as well. So it was, KPP branded, but available to the entire public power community.
One final. Has FERC reached out to any of you at all? I mean, personally, to ask questions or gather data?
Other than the normal data request that I think all market participants received, we have not. Our attorneys have talked to them, but FERC has not reached out to myself or anybody at KMEA.
Okay, thanks.
Same.
One follow-up to that, if I may, Terry Pemberton again. With regard to the indices and the legitimacy of those, are you guys participating at the FERC level on that discussion? There's a FERC docket that we're aware of that's talking about potential reforms with regard to the indices. Actually, that docket initiated prior to this event, but since the event, it's certainly geared up a little bit with respect to comments being received. Are you aware of it? Are you participating? And when you say you protested your invoices, was it based on some idea that it would be, if there's a disgorgement or something, that there would be a, on the indexes, that would flow back to you, or is that a totally separate issue?
Yeah, so, yeah, we're aware of that FERC docket. We are not a active intervener in it, but we're monitoring it is how we're following that case. I can't get into a lot of the strategy on our protest of our bills. But, we're trying to keep that as generic and open and cover all avenues. I will tell you that I would love to see FERC come out and say there was some issue in the price setting of those daily indexes. I think that would help us. So.
All right, I'm looking for any follow-up questions from staff, and I'm not seeing anything. I think everybody's getting about ready for lunch, and we've taken plenty of your time, but it has been very worthwhile. I want to thank you. I mean, I will just say, I think it's just extremely important for us to have this dialogue with you all, just like it is, when we have dialogue with the co-ops as well. I mean, we regulate rates and services for a lot of the utilities in the state, directly on a retail level. But that doesn't mean that what we do here doesn't impact you all and that we shouldn't stay aware of what's going on. I'm keenly aware that our activities representing the state at the Southwest Power Pool have an impact on you. You mentioned the Southern Star rate case. I mean, we don't have to get into it, but we're intervened in that, and we undertake those activities on behalf of all Kansans, Kansas City's businesses. And so we are partners in some sense. And so want to thank you for the educational opportunity here and to learn about your activities and how you're approaching current events, so to speak. So thank you very much again, and have a drive safe back home.